156,000 jobs were cut by AI. So why aren't we in a recession yet? Every laid off worker was also a customer. So who's left to buy anything? Here's the thing nobody says out loud. You are two people at once. At work, you're a cost. A salary some company would love to trim, but the second you clock out, you're the customer that exact same company is desperate to sell to. Same person, two hats. For about 100 years, those two hats stayed in balance. What's new right now is that the tool cutting your salary and the tool chasing you as a customer are the same. So here's where we're going. I'll show you how AI is quietly pulling apart the loop the whole economy runs on, who feels it first, and the honestly bizarre thing the growth numbers started doing this year to hide it. Let's start with what already happened, because this isn't a prediction, it's a receipt. Challenger does a monthly layoffs review of American companies and asks them one simple question: why? And for 3 months straight this year, the top answer wasn't the economy or costs or some other slowdown. It was AI. In one of those months, 40% of every announced job cut pointed straight at automation. That's not a footnote anymore. That's the leading cause. Tech alone has cut more than 120,000 roles this year, up by 2/3, while telling investors in the same breath they're spending more on AI than ever. Amazon says it plainly. It's cutting around 30,000 corporate jobs, and its own chief executive admitted that with AI they'll simply need fewer people to do today's work. This isn't a factory closing in some small town. This is the head office. The spreadsheet people, the email people, the desk jobs everyone swore were safe. But look closer, and AI isn't taking the job. It's taking the first job. Economists at Stanford pulled payroll records for millions of workers, then split them by age. And the pattern is almost surgical. For young workers, 22 to 25, in the roles most exposed to AI like coding and customer support, employment is down about a fifth since late 2022. Now here's the tell. In those exact same jobs, workers over 30 didn't drop. They grew. Sit with that for a second. AI isn't replacing experience, at least not yet. It's replacing the trainee, the junior, the person you used to hire cheap and teach. Researchers even gave these young workers a nickname, borrowed from coal miners, canaries, and it shows up where it hurts. For basically the first time, fresh graduates have higher unemployment than the general workforce. We sent them to college, and they're the ones the machine met at the door. Saw the bottom step off a ladder, and it isn't just whoever was standing on it. Nobody behind them can climb at all. Something here doesn't add up. When companies cut this many paychecks, the textbook is clear. People spend less, the economy slows, everyone gets nervous. Except that is not what happened. Through the exact months companies bragged that AI helped them cut jobs, the economy didn't stall. It grew. On paper, everything looked fine, and that's the part that should stop you cold. If millions of people are losing income, but the whole machine keeps climbing, then somebody else is doing the spending. Somebody with pockets deep enough to hold up an entire economy almost single-handed. So before we get to who's getting hurt, we have to answer a weirder question first. If it isn't you holding this economy up, then who is? This year, the answer stopped being us. The 4 biggest tech companies are spending somewhere around $700 billion this year alone building AI. Chips, data centers, power. $700 billion, that is more than an entire country like Switzerland makes in a year, poured into buildings full of computers. And when the government added up what actually grew the economy this year, roughly 3/4 of it came from that AI spending. Regular people buying regular things, under a fifth. Think about how upside down that is. America's supposed to be a shopping economy. Normally about 70% of it is just you and me out buying stuff. Right now, the thing holding it up isn't the customer at the store. It's a handful of companies buying chips from each other. The loop found a shortcut. The machine is buying from the machine, routing straight around the human in the middle. And it works beautifully. Right up until somebody actually has to buy whatever all that AI produces. And you can already hear that customer starting to crack. Americans just pushed credit card debt past $1.3 trillion, a record. At the same time, the slice of each paycheck people actually managed to save has collapsed, from about 6 cents on the dollar 2 years ago to roughly 4 today. Put those together, and it is not a healthy picture. More than half the people carrying a card balance say it's for essentials, groceries. Rent. Not a vacation, just a Tuesday. Even the head of the Federal Reserve now describes the economy with a single letter, K, the top line rising, the bottom line falling at the same time. The wealthy are spending just fine, the bottom third spending actually shrank. So the machine arrives to thin out the payroll at the exact moment a huge chunk of the customer base is already living on the card. These two lines were always going to cross. Now let me argue against myself for a minute, because the other side has a real case. Every single time a new machine shows up, we panic that it will eat all the jobs. And mostly, it hasn't. Almost 100 years ago, the economist Keynes coined a phrase for exactly this fear, technological unemployment, and then basically told everyone to relax, because new work always shows up. By the 50s, that promise was practically corporate gospel. Here's an actual industrial film from 1955.
Workers are upgraded. The emphasis shifts from manual to mental skills.
That was the pitch. Machines take the muscle work and people move up to the thinking work. And for 70 years, it mostly kept being true. The cash machine was supposed to kill the bank teller. Instead, cheaper branches meant banks opened far more of them and hired more tellers, not fewer. And listen to who is suddenly making that optimistic case. The same AI boss who last year warned that half of entry-level office jobs could vanish spent this year quietly walking it back, saying maybe the work just transforms instead. Another one flat out admitted he had been, quote, pretty wrong about the damage. Even the careful academic work lands somewhere hopeful. One big new paper argues automation can actually push wages up, even as labor's slice of the pie shrinks. So the honest bull case is simple. Relax. We have seen this movie. The jobs come back, and they pay better. And that would be comforting if 3 things about this time weren't different. First, the bottom of the ladder. Every machine before this automated a task. This one automates the entry-level job itself, the training ground where careers actually start. And if nobody can get the first job, the ladder stops feeding. Even the experienced workers everyone calls safe end up with no next generation behind them. Second, the speed. The bank teller had decades to adjust. This is landing in quarters. And even the optimists admit that when change comes this fast, things can lurch and break before the new jobs ever show up. A job that comes back in 20 years doesn't pay this month's rent. And third, the Ford problem. There's a famous story that Henry Ford doubled his workers' pay so they could afford the very cars they were building. Historians say that's mostly a myth, but the logic underneath it is iron. A company can only sell as much as its customers can actually afford. An economy that's brilliant at cutting the paycheck and clumsy at replacing it eventually runs out of people to sell to. So I'm not going to tell you the robots are coming for us all. I'll tell you exactly what to watch, and you can hold me to it. 1. Does new graduate unemployment keep beating the national rate? 2. Does labor's share of the economy keep sliding? And 3. Do everyday consumers ever come back as the engine of growth? Or is it just the machine buying from the machine? Automation has always destroyed some jobs and created new ones. The real question for this decade isn't whether the machines can do the work, it's whether they've left anyone with a paycheck to buy what the machines make. Nobody knows exactly how this lands, or how fast, but the tell won't be in the demos, it'll be in the paychecks. So keep watching those numbers, and I'll see you next week.